Hey guys, what's up? This is Keir from Strength Coach Network. Got some good weather, so coming outside to do this video today. And I want to talk about a really important concept that shaped a lot of my thinking over the last 5 or so years. And it goes like this. It's actually a question that I ask myself on a routine basis. I ask all my co-workers, and I use it as an interview question whenever I speak to a prospective intern or assistant. And it is, what is one thing that you know to be true that 99% of people would disagree with you on in this field? And the initial reaction when you ask this is, it's quite an easy question to answer. But when you go through the exercise of answering, what typically happens is that people just pick one side of a common 50-50 split debate, or they create an argument that doesn't exist out of nothing in order to be able to answer the question. And I must be honest that this question is a straight steal from Peter Thiel, who was the co-founder of PayPal. He was the first outside investor in Facebook, and he was the co-founder of Palantir, which just IPO'd for something like $10 billion. So an outrageously successful investor and businessman. He also wrote the book 0 to 1, which to my mind is probably one of the most influential books that I've read in recent years. I think it's a book that all strength and conditioning professionals should read, even though it's got nothing to do with coaching. And 0 to 1 is built on this central concept that all great businesses are built on a secret, i.e. something you know to be true that nobody else believes. And one phrase that he uses in the book again and again is that competition is for losers, which you might think is quite counterintuitive in a capitalistic society like America, where everyone's encouraged to compete. But in investing, people often talk about the price being baked in. And what that means is that when people have equal access to information, they know where the value is. They bid up the price on a potential investment, and of course the value is going to be the difference between what you pay for something and what it's ultimately going to be worth. When two people bid that up, eventually there's no value left to capture, and it ceases to be profitable. The same is true in business. The more you compete head on with other people within the marketplace, the more you typically race to the bottom in terms of price, the less value or profit there is left to capture. And he uses the example in the book of the airline industry, which is hugely competitive. The global market yearly is something like $500 billion, but none of the companies make any money. They actually break even or lose money flying people around, and any additional profit comes from fees, and they have to subsidize all the other seats with business class and first class and so on. Conversely, he uses the example of Google. It's a much smaller market that they operate in, but they make $50 billion a year in profit. And that is because they didn't compete, they innovated. And by innovate, we can simply take that to mean doing something that nobody else is doing, and crucially, having the judgment to realize that nobody else is doing it, not because it's a bad idea, but just because they haven't thought of it yet and they don't know that there's value to be had there. And of course, he's absolutely right. If you think about a number of really breakaway successful businesses in just the 21st century. So Netflix didn't choose to compete anymore with Blockbuster in terms of physical rentals. They broke away to completely online, and now it's worth $150 billion, something crazy like that. Tesla, all the other major auto manufacturers were staying with internal combustion, no interest in self-driving cars, and those two innovations have helped Tesla to become the most valuable car company on earth, even though they actually do much less business. A lot of people think the true value of Tesla is going to be from the future, from those innovations. Likewise for Dyson. James Dyson did not choose to compete with the other vacuum manufacturers by trying to make an incrementally better bagged vacuum. He just got rid of the bag and innovated. And of course, this concept of innovation applies to sport too. if we think about some of the biggest quantum leaps in performance standards in a variety of different sports, it's come from athletes and organizations that chose to stop competing in the traditional manner and to innovate. So steroids, for example. Steroids were completely legal until they weren't, and the Soviet performances were so outrageous that the Americans couldn't figure out what was going on until the team doctor got drunk one night at the hotel competition and spilled the beans. If you look at the Braun F1 team about 10 or 15 years ago, the year that Jenson Button won, and I think Braun absolutely walked the Constructors' Championship, it was in large part due to a front splitter technology on the car, which gave Braun just an outrageous advantage over their competitors in terms of aerodynamics. And if you look at the Fosbury flop in high jump, everyone used to use the scissor or straddle technique until Dick Fosbury figured out that if he did a flop technique, he could put the axis of rotation of his body way outside of his center of gravity, and it allowed him to win the gold medal at the Olympics, add a ton to his PR. And of course, when you get an outrageous advantage like this, one of two things happen, or both of them happen. One is that what you're doing is quickly deemed to be illegal and outlawed, and the second is that everyone else starts copying you. And of course, now that nobody uses steroids, the front splitter is illegal in F1, and everybody jumps with the Fosbury flop in high-level high jump competition. There's no real inherent competitive advantage associated with that. It's just business as usual, and athletes and organizations are forced to go through that cycle of innovation again to try and uncover the next big thing that's going to push them ahead of their competition. So what are the implications of this 0 to 1 concept? Well, firstly and importantly, if what you're doing looks almost exactly like what your opponents are doing, you need to be quite honest with yourself that that's probably not where any competitive advantage that you have lies. That's not going to be the thing that makes the difference. It's going to allow you to get equal with your competitors, but it's really not going to be that special in terms of driving wins and losses. So this is just a little pet peeve of mine, that anytime we highlight a certain weight room program as being responsible for a team's success, and it's indistinguishable from one of 20 other programs that are using it, it's really not. The second is that you need to build opportunities to make those small gambles in your program for things that are unorthodox or not done by the competition, because these might actually be where you uncover a competitive advantage that you can double down on within your program, rather than just chase small incremental gains across the board. It doesn't mean that you should go all in, but you should certainly create opportunities for yourself and those around you to push the envelope every now and then and just see what the effects are. The trick is of course not exposing yourself to complete ruin or loss with those bets. And the third is that you need to understand that doing the same thing year after year, if you did have a competitive advantage in the first place, which you probably didn't, you're quickly going to be caught up by your opponents, and that advantage is going to evaporate. So in reality, the same program year after year isn't just the same, it's getting worse and worse. So to finish up, the thing that I believe to be true, that I believe 99% of my peers in the field would disagree with me on, is that modern strength and conditioning and the professionalization of sport has caused more injuries than it ever prevented. And this is because I think we figured out, a couple of centuries ago, really what the upper limit of training volume that athletes can tolerate. And with the added incentive of extra money and professionalization, we've just piled more and more and more volume on top, especially as we've added in more dedicated forms of training like strength and conditioning, and we've never really taken away. And No doubt we recover better, we have better support for athletes, but fundamentally I think there are still some fairly strict limits as to what the body can tolerate, and everything that we've added on top has outstripped any increase in recovery that we're able to achieve. That makes me quite unpopular sometimes. People accuse me of not being a real strength coach because I say that what we've done has caused a lot of injuries, but that's the thing that I believe to be true. So have a crack at the question. Please subscribe, like, follow, and drop me a comment below with the thing that you believe to be true that 99% of our field would disagree with you on.